Hey guys, just want to let you know before this episode starts that you can check out the trailer to the indie game I'm working on by going to the card up here or checking the link in the description. It is also available on my channel if you just look for it. Also, before this episode starts, I wanted to let y'all know that you can get access to these episodes and videos a day early if you go and check out Nathan Butnett on Spotify. With all that said, let's get on with the episode.
I'll do anything. I'll do whatever it takes to...
Hey guys, Nathan Burnett, episode 72. Just a solo episode this time, so let's go ahead and get things started. First things first, I am wearing a cool shirt that my mother got me for Christmas, so thank you. She knows about the podcast. Never too old to shout out mom and give love and thanks. So it's the iconic photo of LeBron, Kobe, and Jordan together. But with that, I want to go ahead and segue that into the Christmas games. So obviously with Christmas and everything going on, I was with family, so didn't get too much time to check out not too many of the games, but I did catch the 76ers Celtics game. And to say the least, I think that both teams played sloppy. I thought for a while that the 76ers weren't going to close out the game. I was worried that they were going to let the Celtics go ahead and take it, considering that the Celtics went on a huge 11-0 run in the fourth quarter. And I just saw a lot of mistakes from both teams that I wanted to talk about. So first things first, Paul George went 0 for 7 from 3 and 4 for 15 in the field goal. And the reason I bring this up is not necessarily to shit on Paul George, but it's important to note the fact that the more touches that Paul George gets being injected into that system is touches that are going to take away from Maxey. I've brought this up numerous times, and now more people have, especially last season and this season, considering what Maxey did in the playoffs. But Maxey really should be the first option for that team. He always really has been the star and the first option for that team. But with Embiid getting more media attention, being in the MVP conversations, they're never really going to give Maxey that responsibility or that freedom. And that's really disappointing because he really is the best scorer on that team. Even in that game, he had 33, but if Paul George wasn't taking away those touches with his 12 points, then Maxey could have easily had 40 or beyond, at least in my view, in my statistical and analytical opinion. So, again, I really think that Maxey should get some more touches. He should be the first option on that team, but that is just beating a dead horse. For positives for that game, Caleb Martin was amazing. If I recall, he went 7 for 9 from 3. Let me just double check. Yes, 7 for 9. So he really was the scorer in that game, and he was doing fantastic. Another small note that I want to point out is Yabusele. He went 12, 4, and 1. So not crazy numbers, but I thought they were pretty high for him. And that makes me happy just as a basketball fan because Yabusele, I did a video on. He has previously been in the NBA, and he was never really given a chance because he was, a deep bench player, not getting very many minutes a game. And, of course, that dunk on LeBron in the Olympics sort of put him in the spotlight a little bit more. So I did a video diving into him, his statistics, how he can perform in the NBA. And the analysis that I came to in the end of that video was he really just needs to be given a chance. And it seems that the 76ers are giving him more minutes. They're giving him that chance that he needs to really go out and perform. And he is succeeding so far, at least. So I'm glad that he has been given those minutes and that chance to succeed. And we'll see what else he can do. As far as the Celtics, Peyton Pritchard had a really off night, going 1 for 9 in the field goal and 0 for 8 from the 3-point. So that really wasn't helping them. And again, Celtics were giving up really lousy steals. They were losing the ball. They were making silly mistakes, and so was the 76ers. Again, I saw sloppy mistakes from both teams. There was steals on the 76ers side as well where they lost the ball and the Celtics got it. And again, to the Maxey thing, I visibly saw that issue going on and Maxey react to it. There was a point in either the third or fourth quarter, I don't remember the exact score, where Maxey was open on the three, and either Paul George or Embiid got the ball instead, and Maxey visibly just threw his hands up on the 3-point because I believe they missed, and Maxey just kind of went like this, like, guys, come on, like, I was open, like, you got to give me the ball. So it visibly is causing an issue now. But that is about all I have for the Christmas games. Again, I know there was a lot of games going on that day, but with it being Christmas, you can only watch so much. So that was sort of my take from the Celtics 76ers game, was that the 76ers need to know how to close out games and not have sloppiness, especially with the Celtics 11-0 run. Of course, they did end up closing it out and winning, but it was definitely way closer than it should have. Then again, it is the Celtics, who is one of the best teams in the league right now, as much as it pains me to say. But again, the 76ers were up for so long in that game and then only ended up winning by a little bit. So moving past Christmas, this video should go up sometime around, I think, the 16th. So with that said, I'm going to do what I do every year for the podcast in January, which is give my goals for 2025 and sort of talk more about the channel rather than basketball. Again, if you want to skip past this part, there are always timestamps in the description for if you want to go to a specific topic for me to talk about, but this is something for me to connect with my community and sort of talk about what my goals for this year and the future of the channel will be, and hopefully you guys will support me and help me get there. So originally in 2024, I've mentioned this several times in 2024 because 2024 was a crazy year, but my goal for 2024 originally was to hit 1K subs, because before I started the year, I only had 600 subscribers. And so I figured, like, if we can hit 1K in 2024, like, that'll be great. And we ended up going crazy and getting 11,000 subscribers at the time I record this. So I'm going to go for another high goal, just like hitting 10K. And I thought that it's good mathematically to have this goal, but also it kind of works out with the year, funny enough. So for 2025, I want to hit 25K subscribers. So 25 for 25, that's going to be, I guess, our motto for this year, is to hit at least 25K subscribers by the end of 2025. So hopefully you guys will share the videos around, like, comment, help the algorithm, all that good stuff. That is my main goal for 2025. If we hit it, I already have a cool subscriber special planned. So again, I think we can do it. We blew the last goal of 2024 of 1K. Again, went crazy and instead got over 10K. So rather than saying something like 15K or 20K, I decided that 25K is a bit on the higher side. So let's go for that, and hopefully we can just blow it out of the water like we did in 2024. Who knows? Maybe I'll look back on this and we'll have 50K or 100K. That would be pretty cool. But it's pretty ambitious, but we'll see. Anyway, that's sort of my main goal. With just going into the future of the podcast, again, I've mentioned this several times. My biggest goal for the podcast is to one day go on tour with this. But in order to do that, I would probably need like at least 200K subs. So that's far into the future. Unless, again, I have another crazy 2 years or something like that. But With that said, I think that's sort of just my long-term and short-term goals. If I think of some more, I'll include them in here. But I definitely want to hit 25K and again one day go on tour. I think for personal responsibility for me and goals and things that I will do to try and hit that is a personal goal of mine is this podcast. I feel like has always been kind of secondary for the other content on my channel, which sucks because obviously this is how the channel started. This was the origins of the channel was this podcast, but I don't do it every week like I originally planned to. I always just sort of saw it as a hobby and didn't always keep up with it like I should. I always felt like sometimes I didn't have enough to talk about to make a weekly episode, and I don't want to just put lousy content out there for you guys. So I didn't record every week because I didn't want to just ramble on for an hour with nothing to talk about. So with this being episode 72, I'm going to try this year to do one scripted video every other week and then one podcast video every other week. So they'll alternate. So this will go up on the 16th. So then the next one would be on the 30th. And then the last one before this one on the 16th should have been on the 2nd. So it'll kind of alternate like that. Every 2 weeks will be a podcast. And with that, that means that I want to try and hit at least 90 episodes of the podcast by the end of 2025. So there's 52 weeks in a year. So that means that if it's either 50, 52, 54 weeks. Let's see, 365 divided by 7 would be 5, 15, 52. Yes, 52 weeks. Had to do that math in my head for a second. Sorry about that. There's 52 weeks. So if I do every other week, then that equals out to 26 episodes. So originally I was thinking like, I want to hit 100 by the end of the year because, that would be a nice round number, 100. But if I did every other week, even if I was consistent with it, this is only episode 72, so we would cap out at around 98 episodes. So I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway, and even if I miss a few weeks, my goal is to at least hit 90 to 95 episodes for the podcast, and then hopefully we can hit 100 episodes like right at the start of 2026. So anyway, I know that was a lot of community talk, a lot of podcast talk, not really much basketball talk. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with some more basketball talk. And the first thing that I will talk about is Mike Brown being fired, because that is probably the biggest news story as of right now as I record this on, again, December 31st, or December 30th. So, Mike Brown being fired. Definitely not his fault, and it's a terrible decision by the organization. I know that is very surface level to say, but again, he is the coach that brought them to the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. The Kings haven't had a championship nearly since the entire time of the league, and he was really the coach that was making progress with them. And they nearly beat the Warriors in the play-in last time. It's just the Warriors are the Warriors, but they still ended up taking them to Game 7. The main problem is not Mike Brown, it's the GM. I even talked in episode 71 and in the Shot Clock Talks episode that I really admire Mike Brown. I think he does amazing coaching. I think it's sort of inherits coaching from Popovich, and it is really what a coach needs to be. There are so many of these coaches nowadays that's just sort of let the players do their own thing and let the bus drive itself, apart from the Rockets coach, which I'll get into later. But Mike Brown really is sort of harnessing Popovich's energy and being a coach that the Kings need, and they really had a system there to play team basketball. And I think injecting DeMar DeRozan into that system really disrupted everything. And I predicted that when they traded for him, and I said like this is gonna throw some things off. This may not work. And there are some people that are saying that De'Aaron Fox got him fired, which I found interesting because Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox have always had a pretty good relationship, at least from what I've seen. Again, I compared it to sort of a Popovich-Tim Duncan relationship, which I know is crazy to say, but again, you can watch previous episodes and to how I make that comparison. The way, if you compare interview clips of the way Popovich talks about Tim Duncan and vice versa, and compare that to Mike Brown talking about De'Aaron Fox and vice versa, they talk very similarly of each other. And so I really saw that relationship and the coach and the player. And again, it really reminds me of Popovich and Tim Duncan, but the team wasn't winning games, and for whatever reason they blamed Mike Brown and fired him when he's one of the only unanimous coaches of the year, which is crazy. And again, it is not his fault. They need to blame the GM because the GM thought, yeah, well, putting DeMar DeRozan here will be the one piece we need to go to a championship. And if you give Mike Brown the wrong pieces, then there's nothing he can do as a coach. That goes for any team. And so the coach always gets the blame and is always the scapegoat. Again, I've made several videos about that as well, that the coaches are the scapegoat of the NBA. When 9 times out of 10, or at least 8 times out of 10, the GM is the problem. We see the same thing with the Suns, how they fired Frank Vogel whenever they tried to make a team with KD, Booker, Bradley Beal, all of them. Lakers, same thing. They fired Frank Vogel as well. And it just simply, the coach a lot of the time is not the problem. The GM thinks that star power fixes everything. And a lot of time, that is not what you need. I've made the joke before that if you watch all of my podcast and make a drinking game of taking a shot every time I say the words team chemistry, that you will probably die. But it's true. Team chemistry is a very important part of basketball. And just injecting DeMar DeRozan, or any star for that matter, is going to throw that off. And DeMar DeRozan just did not click with what is going on. There was already a built-in team dynamic, and they tried to inject more star power, and it just didn't blend. We saw that even with the Spurs back before. DeMar DeRozan was an exceptional player, but the Spurs were losing with him because DeMar DeRozan is a on-ball primarily player. And that's not what the Kings need. The Kings need somebody that will look for the best available shot, the best open man. And DeMar DeRozan is more of an on-ball player. And again, just like we talked about with Maxey, it takes away from other players. And that's something that the Kings have worked on with Mike Brown, and they figured out. And then DeMar DeRozan is coming and sort of reverting the Kings dynamic. And so I'm sure that the Kings will continue to lose games, and then they're going to realize, like, oh, Mike Brown wasn't the problem. Because Mike Brown has been a phenomenal coach for the Kings. Again, he took them to the playoffs for the first time in forever. It's shocking that they fired him, and it was definitely the wrong decision. But I think I've rambled on about that long enough. I could go into the stats of it, but we have some other things to cover this podcast. So we'll go ahead and get into it. With the Rockets, so similar to talking about coaches, Ime Udoka, we talked a little bit about this last episode because Fernando is a Rockets fan, but Ime Udoka is doing excellent work right now with the Houston Rockets. They recently just moved up to second in the West, which is crazy because I did not expect them to jump up that far. And say what you will, that the West is not as difficult as the East or whatever you want to say, but moving up to second in rankings from where they were just 2 years ago is pretty crazy because before they were a 22-60 team at less than 30% win percentage. You could obviously say that they were tanking in part for players like Wemby and things like that, but nevertheless, still a less than 30 win-loss, which is abysmal. They had a defensive rating of 119.3, and that was 4.5 worse than the league average. They had an offensive rating that was 3.4 less than the league average, which was 111.4. Their coach was Silas. Their pace was 99. Their strength of schedule, despite being such a terrible team, was negative 7.62. And yeah, their stats were just all over the place. Just last year, they jumped that 22-60 to a 50-win team with a strength of schedule a little bit above league average. Their offensive rating increased by 3 points, and their defensive rating, shockingly enough, improved by nearly 6 points. So defense really putting in work there. And this year, they are so far a 67% win team at 21-10. Their offensive rating has gone up, their offensive rating has gone down a little bit, but it's still relative to the league. And their defensive rating has gone up 7 points. It went up from 113 to 106. Because remember, defensive rating, the lower the number, the better. So their defense has gotten a lot better, which makes sense because they have players like Sengun on the team. And so they are really utilizing their resources. And it just goes to show that a good coach can make all the difference. So there are circumstances, unlike the Mike Brown circumstance, where a good coach does come in and change things. And Ime Udoka, it really is doing amazing work. I won't touch too much on there because I want to continue to see what the Rockets do. So if they continue to be great, I will probably continue talking about them next episode. But before we get into the AllStar Voting, which will probably be the main thing of this episode, I wanted to touch on college basketball, actually. So going into 2025, there will obviously be a countdown to March Madness once again. And usually what I do is I touch more on college basketball around February and March to get ready for March Madness. But I really wanted to dive into college stuff this month in December and January to get everybody prepared for March Madness and also give a bit of insight into what the bracket may look like, things like that, so we aren't just playing catch-up work in February and March making our brackets. We're trying to keep up with the college basketball. So it is hard to catch some college basketball games because sometimes they're during the day when people are at work, and also sometimes like you got to find where they're being streamed at, things like that. But that being said, we can go ahead and go into it. So for men's basketball, Tennessee is undefeated, but from what I've seen, they are a bit cocky. They are taking shots that they shouldn't be taking. A lot of alley-oops against MTSU, against Syracuse. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So all their alley-oops obviously have been getting points, but to me, it just comes off as sort of cocky, arrogant, and I don't know. To me, they're taking way too many alley-oops, things like that. And that can lead to making silly mistakes. I think that if they go into the tournament acting cocky, they're going to realize that they can get upset by a different team. Up here, it's not shown on camera because of the angle that I have, but just up here, I have a Wichita State beanie that I got whenever I was around 10 years old, maybe. Because I got this the season that they were going undefeated, which was 2013 to 2014. So I was around 11 or 12 at the time. But I've had this for a decade because I remember my dad got me this again when they went undefeated. And this beanie is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. In 2013 to 2014, Wichita State went undefeated all the way into the tournament, going 34-0, and then they went up against Kentucky. Kentucky upset them, beat them, and then Kentucky went on and then lost the championship. So anything can happen in March Madness, even if you're an undefeated team. And we saw that even last year. Last year was some of the most chaotic March Madness. Like, everybody's bracket was busted literally within the first day of the tournament. So when it comes to March Madness, anything can happen. So even with how good Tennessee is doing, I probably will not have them winning the tournament whenever I make my bracket. But it's still December and January. Anything can happen. But I will say that I do like the hustle that they have. Even though they are being cocky, they are working hard for what they get. They're chasing down steals. They're getting rebounds. Things like that just shows their commitment to the game, which is really good. And I wanted to kind of connect that with the Louisville-Kentucky fight that kind of happened. They sort of had a scuffle. And we talked on Shot Clock Talks with CJ that a lot of the NBA, obviously the NBA viewership is down. And an issue with that was brought up is that not many people really have that Mamba mentality, that killer mentality. They're sort of cogs in a machine in the NBA now because they're worried that they're going to get fined and all these other things. And these college players really have more of that hustle and sort of that drive and that killer mentality. So hopefully if some of these college players enter the NBA, it'll reignite those fumes that sort of gets that, not necessarily chaos, but the personality back into the game. Again, I keep saying the word mentality, but that killer instinct in the game, that competitiveness, I guess I should say. They had good teamwork. Again, they were rebounding and everything like that. I did check out Cooper Flagg because he is currently the number 1 draft pick, but I honestly like Dylan Harper better. I was watching Dylan Harper as well. I think that Dylan Harper is the better pick, especially because Cooper Flagg, it's projected that if he's the number 1 pick, he'll probably go to the Wizards again, and that would mean that he is probably going to be their first option, along with people like Jordan Poole. But I don't know if he has the skills yet to be a first option guard for a team. I think he still needs to be developed before he gets to that point. And that is shown in his scouting report, that he has a poor 3-point, and something that I saw looking at the highlights of him that they also mentioned in the scouting report is he has very loose ball handling. He can be tighter with his ball handling. I saw that a lot as well, where he's sort of not protecting the ball whenever he's dribbling, and he takes his eyes off his defender a lot whenever he's looking for sort of his open teammates and things like that, which could have left him open for steals. I didn't see him getting stolen that often in highlights. I'm just saying it's possible with the way that he's playing. I think that in transferring to the NBA, he could have a lot of turnovers. And so if he goes to a team like the Wizards and they try and immediately push him to be the first option, it's not really going to work with the where he's at. He needs to develop more. He also needs to be on a team where if he tries to get assists, he needs players that can play off of those assists rather than a team like the Wizards. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with something like Cade Cunningham and the Pistons, where Cade Cunningham is a great player, but he doesn't have the team to really make up for that. With that being said, going into some more news, Jim Laronga retired from Miami, and they say it's related to how the NCAA has gone recently, and they connected that to Tony Bennett, which Sports Illustrated says, quote, Tony Bennett, an old 55 man when it comes to the current state of the game, and he freely admitted that Friday, more than any of the other national championship coaches who have retired in recent years, from Jay Wright to Jim Boeheim to Mike Krasinski to Roy Williams, Bennett plainly stated that the current state of affairs is driving him away. He called himself a square peg in a round hole. He said his staff pulled him along in the new era of handling most of the conversations with players' agents. He said college athletics is not in a healthy spot and it needs to get back to regulations and guardrails. And they continue with their article. They said if he'd retired last spring, the transfer portal would have opened for 30 days for the Virginia players. The Cavaliers roster likely would have scattered, and that's the way of the world. It happens almost everywhere that a coaching change occurs. So this opens the conversation up to bigger problems with the NCAA. Again, a lot of these players, they in their minds, they think they're already NBA players. They have agents, things like that. They want to get paid for their play, which obviously makes sense. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be played, but the NCAA has gone through numerous player agreements, things like that, especially the issues with them using their likeness in the NCAA games and all of that. But it just sort of puts more strain on the coaches and the universities because these are still like kids. These are still 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old players, maybe older, or maybe not as young as 17. But, freshmen are 18, 19, going into 20s, and they're acting like they're professional players already. They have agents now. They're trying to market themselves, and rather than signing to a school and staying there, as soon as they see sort of a red flag, they use the transfer portal and transfer to a different school, which obviously creates a bunch of chaos because then you have moving rosters, just like the NBA, you have trades, everything like that. And then there's also the paperwork that goes along with that, transferring classes and universities and everything. Obviously, if you're trying to be a professional player, you're probably not going to be worried about your classes. But again, not all of these players are going to go pro. So I think that everything around the commercialization of college basketball, and again, all these new agreements with the NCAA, it has sort of polluted and corrupted the atmosphere around playing in college, and it sort of taints the idea and gives a lot of players the delusion, again with having agents and things like that, that they're already going to go pro. It's already a done deal. They need to go somewhere that works for them rather than what it was, a few years ago or a decade ago, where choosing where somebody is going to play is like a huge decision. You have signing day, you have the three hats out and things like that, where somebody will pick up the hat and that's their school for the time being. And now you can just transfer wherever and it doesn't really matter. And I don't know. I'm rambling here, but my point is a lot of these players, again, are filled with the delusion. And not to talk bad about college NBA, like college players, it's not their fault, but all of these different agreements about them getting agents, them getting paid now for being played in college, they have to take a step back and realize they are in college, and if they don't go pro, they should still get a degree and not just treat it as if they're already in the NBA or whatever professional sport that they are playing. That's the most basic way to say it. I don't really know how to put it into words, but hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So, with that said, we can go into sort of the rankings for men's basketball. So UConn currently is 10-3. They have won the last two championships, so I think that a lot of people are going to choose them to win it this year. And their coach, Dan Hurley, has done amazing. He is currently has a 70% winning percentage for his career since he started in 2018. The second highest, or the coach that is near that winning percentage is the coach with the best winning percentage at UConn, which was Jim Calhoun from 1986 to 2012, who had a 72 winning percentage. So UConn, of course, definitely has a shot this year, but again, a lot can change between now and the tournament. Wichita State, my favorite team whenever it comes to college basketball, is 9-3. Memphis is 10-3. Duke is 10-2. SMU is 11-2, above Duke. UNC is just above 500 at 7-5. Virginia also 7-5. Clemson doing very well at 10-3. They put up a good fight against Alabama last tournament. UCLA is 11-2, and Florida, shockingly, is 13-0. So a lot of teams that can put up a show in this tournament, and we'll see what comes getting closer to March. I'm sure that we'll probably have Swiss Eel on. We'll have some other people come on and talk about college basketball, get their thoughts. But I think so far that UConn has a really good shot. Florida also, again, 13-0. UCLA 11-2. But a lot of these teams can go pretty far. Duke, again, has the number one draft pick projected, but that's usually always the case with Duke. And again, they haven't been the championship in the last few years. So I honestly think Duke may be in the Elite Eight or Final Four, but I don't think Duke will win the championship, but we'll see. Going into women's basketball, because we cover all basketball here, Paige is still playing for UConn, so UConn might be able to go pretty far in this tournament. I know that there was a big debacle about her versus Caitlin Clark last year, and people were saying that the game was fixed for Caitlin Clark because everybody loves Caitlin Clark, and now Paige is still playing for UConn. But, and they also got Sarah Strong, who's a really good freshman. But they just lost to UNC, who has Juju Watkins. And so UNC went up several spots in the rankings while UConn dropped. And the key takeaways, as reported, was this was the Trojans' first test since losing to Notre Dame. Now they face 3 ranked Big Ten teams in the next 4 games. As for UConn, this was the second top 10 team the Huskies have faced this season, and they are now 0-2 after also losing to Notre Dame. So UConn not doing so great, even though they have Paige and this new freshman. So we'll have to see how it goes. So I originally thought that UConn, again, they have Paige, they have Sarah Strong now. They should be a good team, but recently they have not been doing so great. And South Carolina has been sort of in the news cycle, it's the team that everybody thinks is going to win the championship. They did really great last year, and they won the title in 2022, lost the Final Four in 2023, and then won again last season. However, in each of those seasons, they won their first 12 games, but right now they're 10-1. So breaking that streak of every time they've won the championship, they've gone 12-0 for their first games. So they lost it to UCLA, and UCLA for the women's is 12-0, just like how for the men's they were 11-2. So UCLA doing really good in college basketball on both the men's and women's side. So, and then one last thing I had for the men's as well, that there was big to talk about how this may be the last year for Indiana basketball. If Indiana does not win this year, or at least put up a good fight in the tournament this year for men's or women's basketball, then they might never be in the tournament again, because they came out and said that it's been 37 years since a championship. They missed the tournament last year, and so they said if they do not make good progress, they're instead of basketball, they're going to start putting all of the funding into football. So there was an article, I believe, from Sports Illustrated that said, quote, "Ever since Knight was unceremoniously fired 27 years ago on the eve of the 2000 season, Indiana has seen 5 coaches come and go, none of them permanently restoring the program. Last year they had a lot of injuries, and this year they are 9-3. However, they are having a lot of issues despite being 9-3, because even the article themselves said that how all the puzzle pieces fit remains a work in progress, and that, quote, they're still working on trying to find the best open man. So if they're still working on putting the puzzle pieces together and finding the best shot option for the team, then that spells disaster for the tournament. And again, if they don't do well this tournament, that could be the end of Indiana basketball. So, with that said, we'll have to see how they do this tournament. But we may again be seeing the beginning of the end for Indiana, which is kind of shocking to say. That we're witnessing the history there. So personally, I hope that they do well, just so that we don't lose out on a basketball team. But looking at where they are right now, it doesn't look good. Again, they're 9-3, but in the grand scheme of college basketball, 9-3 isn't something to write home about. Obviously, that's 75%. Which 75% would sound great in something like the NBA where they're playing 82 games. But in terms of college, it's not anything crazy. And again, just reading that they're still trying to figure out how the pieces fit together, it doesn't sound promising. I'll say that. But with that said, I will go ahead and wrap up this episode with my All-Star voting, which I'm sure is what a lot of you came here to see in the first place. So let's get on to it. But whenever I switch, y'all will see my web browser tab and not be able to see my face. So with that said, peace out. I will still obviously be on the mic, but y'all will not see my face. So alrighty, hopefully you guys can all see my screen on Chrome here. On my end, it looks like everything should be good and recording. So let me go ahead and press vote now, and I will go and select my picks. So with this, I should probably preface with the fact that I'm going to try and pick younger players. I have a video coming out where I make an All-Star commercial just like I do every year, and the whole point of that was to get younger stars and younger players in there. And so I am definitely not going to choose players like LeBron or Curry or anyone like that. I want to get a fresh batch of All-Stars in here. I know for the last several years, people have sort of complained about what my all-star picks are, but this is personally what I want to see with all-stars. Again, I know that maybe it's not what some of you want for your all-stars, or you think that maybe some of my picks aren't going to become all-stars, but it's not about how likely they are to become all-stars. It's not about bandwagoning who will be an all-star, again, like LeBron. It's more about what would I think would be an entertaining game? What would be exciting to see? Who would be some fresh new faces in the all-star game? So that's what I am going to vote for. I'm going to vote for the most exciting players that we haven't really seen much of in the all-star game, and who I think may mix things up and bring some excitement to the game, especially since so many people have complained about the boringness of the all-star games the last few years. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the actual voting. I have not looked at the votes yet or who is available to vote for, so this will be purely blind as soon as I click on one of these squares as to whose name pops up. So again, we have players like Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, LeBron, Zion, players like that. So again, like these three players, Anthony Davis, LeBron, Kevin Durant, I'm not going to vote for because they are in it every single year. Zion, I don't really think deserves an all-star right now. Obviously, he's putting up these numbers, but he's been injury-ridden for several years. So as a Spurs fan, I feel like I obviously have to go Wemby, and he's up there right now in this top 5. So I definitely think that he will probably be an all-star in his sophomore season, just like Banchero was, which is exciting. But let's see who else is available. We have Lauri Markkanen, who was an all-star. We have Sengun, who could be a good choice. I'm going to go ahead and go Chet Holmgren just because I think that having Chet and Wemby on the same team would be an ultimate big guy powerhouse. Again, you could say that picking Anthony Davis and LeBron would be a powerhouse, but these two are already on the same team. Again, I don't want these two to be all-stars together right now because we already see them playing together on the Lakers. The whole point of making an all-star team is to get players that you typically wouldn't get playing together. That's how we get players like Jokic and Luka playing together. So I'm going to go Jokic, Wemby, and Chet just because we all know that Jokic will be an all-star anyway. But he's younger than LeBron still, so I still think it meets my criteria of not picking older all-stars that have been there numerous times. But imagining Jokic playing alongside Wemby and then Wemby and Chet being together, I think really is the dream. So I'm going to go with that. So that is my front court. Before I pick my guard spots, I'll go ahead and go to the front court of the East. So again, sticking with sort of the younger players, I'm going to go with Banchero here first. I don't want to go with Embiid just because I personally don't like Embiid to begin with, but also because I think he's seen a few all-star games. Jason Tatum and Giannis, decent picks, but again, they're on some top teams. They've been all-stars quite a bit. So let's go through here and see what sort of fresh faces we may be able to get. I could pick Franz Wagner, but the problem is that he's already on the Magic, just like Banchero. So again, just like with AD and LeBron, I don't want to pick too many players that are already on the same team. So let's go through here. We could pick Siakam. He's a bit of an older player, though. Evan Mobley. We could have Mobley versus Wemby. That would be fun. Who else do we have here? Jakob, Jared Allen. I would go Jared Allen, but again, we already have Evan Mobley picked. So Alexander Sarr as a rookie is on here. We have Yabusele. Okay. I want to pick Giannis, but I think that goes against like me picking players that have already been there. So I think for going down the road of wanting a fun All-Star, it's got to be between sort of these players here: Yabusele, Duran, Caleb Martin, or Jaime. Um, let's go Yabusele just because I was talking about him before and how I want him to get a chance. For him to be an all-star whenever previously he was dropped by the Celtics would be a crazy comeback story and a really fun narrative to talk about. So, again, we got a fresh, young lineup here. And let's try and continue that as we go into the guard selections. So SGA, I think, qualifies. He's been an all-star before, but he's still young enough that I think he qualifies. The good news is a lot of these guards are already pretty young, so we have a lot of options to choose from. Ja Morant hasn't been performing. I mean, he's still in an all-star conversation with his 21 points, but I think that it could be better for an all-star position. You have Kyrie, Luka, Anthony Edwards, etc. I think it would be kind of funny, though, if it was SGA and Kyrie or something like that. Just because these two players sort of have like, or not these two players, these two teams sort of have a rivalry now with the playoffs, the Thunder and the Mavs, especially being in Oklahoma and Texas. So I think it would be fun to see, like, have to see them work together in the All-Stars rather than going against each other, which would be interesting. I'm worried about it being Luka and Kyrie, though, because, again, if they're already on the Mavericks together, I want to see, like, diverse rosters and, like, a mix-up. So I'm going to go Anthony Edwards because I think that will be the two young guards. And then seeing SGA, Anthony Edwards with two amazing guards mixed with Wemby would be really fun. The only thing is Chet and SGA both have already played together on the Thunder. So I may go in... Actually, yeah, I'll do that now. I'll change SGA out with... do I want De'Aaron Fox? Let's go Luka. I know this kind of goes against my rule of picking people that have been All-Stars multiple years. But again, you get the dynamic of Timberwolves versus the Mavs together. And then you get Luka working with not only Jokic, who he's worked with before, but you get a Luka and Chet combo and then a Luka and Wemby combo, which will be really fun to see if that happens, because we will definitely see lobs with that. And Wemby is a player that, again, a lot of people have complained about the All-Star before, but Wemby is competitive in any sort of game. He may play it light to try not to get injured, especially because he recently got injured with the Spurs. But I think Wemby is somebody that will play the All-Star game competitively and try and make it fun, rather than just playing board and like an exhibition game like a lot of players do, and which a lot of fans have complained about. So moving that on to the East, immediately as I see his name, I got to pick Maxey. I've been hyping him up so much, and I think he qualifies under the young All-Star category. Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson, they've already had their All-Star time. Cam Thomas, Donovan Mitchell, Tyler Hero, Trae Young, Darius Garland. So a bit of these have already had their playoff time, like Tyrese Halliburton has already had his time. So Kobe White, Grady Dick, they're pretty good choices for if I want to keep the young lineup. Cade Cunningham, again, hasn't really had a chance because he's been on the Pistons. Who else can we pick here? Okay, so yeah, let's go between Grady Dick, Kobe White, or Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham has the best stats, obviously, out of all of them. I think if we want to go with the same idea of giving Yabusele a chance, let's give Cade Cunningham a chance with a team that isn't the Pistons, so can actually see what it's like to give assists to players that actually score. And with that said, I think this will be my all-star picks. Again, I wanted to go with more younger players or players that don't typically get the chance in all-star. I wanted to try not to pick players that have been on the same team. I think the only ones I have on the same team are Yabusele and Maxey. But even in that circumstance, Yabusele, again, is more of a six-man or bench player, so it's not the same as like picking Embiid, for instance. So it gives a player that doesn't usually get that much spotlight or chance to shine more of a spotlight. And again, it's the ultimate comeback story of Yabusele being cut from the Celtics and other teams in the NBA to come back as an all-star with the 76ers. So, and then we have the younger players of Banchero, who was previously an all-star, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham coming from the Pistons. We have the dynamic of these two guards that have previously played against each other playing together. And then we have Luka and Anthony Edwards, two amazing guards, teamed up with these three amazing bigs. Jokic has been an all-star for the last couple years, but at least for Wemby and Chet, this will be a fun dynamic for them to play in the all-star game. So I think I explained my picks well enough. Again, even if this is likely not to be the All-Stars. This is likely not to be the rosters that will be selected, I'll admit. This is probably not going to happen and has a very small chance of these votes really meaning anything. But again, we vote in the All-Star for what we would like to see. And I think this would be an exciting roster of, again, all sort of relatively fresh faces. Again, some faces that have been there before, like Banchero, Anthony Edwards, Jokic, Luka, but relatively younger and fresh faces and all of that. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and press submit votes, and it'll probably ask for my email, which is when I will press stop recording. So let me know what you guys think of my all-star votes, and I will go ahead and wrap the episode up there. Again, like, subscribe, share the video around, give a comment letting me know what you think of the All-Star votes, and all that good stuff. And I will see you all in the next one. Nathan Burnett, episode 72. Peace out.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.